Hello, happy Saturday. Those of you that have been with me since the beginning, you know this crazy little piece of my hair. It's like baby hair that never ever grows. I don't cut it. This is just what it always does. And I fight with it in almost every episode. It's like a second character of the channel. So it is Sunday. We are in chapter 46. And for those of you that are a little bit lost and trying to catch up, one of the great things has happened. One of the couples has now gotten engaged. And of course, it's called Pride and Prejudice, and we talk about the Pride and Prejudice's aspects of it, but it really is a romance novel. It's about falling in love and how but deeper than that, and looking at society's viewpoint on women's roles, men's roles, class roles, the role of society, and the impact of our culture on how we love and how we marry, and Austen's commentary as a female from her day. Irene, welcome back. Kristen, it's good to see you again. Fareed, always hello to you. Venus, how was work yesterday? Yasvani, you have just become a regular and you need to come join us over on Discord. In the meantime, so we've got Jane and Mr. Bingley engaged, and Elizabeth, the happy third wheel that is the confidant of both, and the falling in love stage. So why isn't the book over? More relationships to resolve. What will become of Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth? What will become of the Bennets? We're in the falling action of the plot map. If you remember in elementary school, you had the opening information, the rising action that introduces the character and the setting and all of that, and the conflict. You've got the turning point. And what would you say, that's interesting, what would you consider the turning point of this book to be? Yes, Fanny, I'm sorry, I'll miss your comments, but have a great day. What would you consider the turning point of Pride and Prejudice to be? I have to ponder that a little bit. Venus, that's a big step. If we say, so let's identify the conflict. The conflict is what's going to happen to the Bennet girls. Are they going to, so that would be man versus society, right? Are they going to find a marriage partner, even though they financially aren't really the kind of girls that would bring much to a marriage? And so we've gotten invitations of marriage. That's not the turning point. What about the revelation that Mr. Darcy does indeed love Elizabeth and the invitation to marry? Is that too early on, do you think? Or do you think it's now that we have Jane and Mr. Bingley together? That could certainly be a turning point. The escape part. The escape, Fareed, of what? What are they escaping? Help me understand that, because I'm not connecting that. An iPad. I don't have an iPad. I don't understand. My son uses it, but he's an artist. My dad uses it, but he needs something bigger to see. My iPhone is big enough and I do everything on that. So unless I got an iPad that could also be a phone, but then you're carrying around this big thing to your ear. I guess if you have the earbuds in it, it works. So I don't know. I don't see the value of it. Venus, I'm proud of you. I'm glad to hear that. Turning points, teachers love to focus on them. As an educator, as a reader, I always struggled with that's the exact turning point moment. But you can kind of defend several different turning points. It just has to align with whatever you've identified as the conflict. And then you begin to see the resolution, because the conflict, the resolution, and the turning point all have to align. Did the turning point initiate the change of the falling action or the resolution? Does the resolution resolve whatever the conflict was? So in math, you've got those checks, when you divide, then you go back and subtract, or whatever the check is that you do in math to make sure the work is right. There are those checks in literature too. If you say this is the rising, this is the conflict, then this is your protagonist. He's the one that's overcoming the conflict. here's the turning point. This is when the conflict really began to change or came to a high point. Here's the resolution. The resolution aligns with the protagonist and the conflict. And so where Darcy escaped with, where he helped Lydia, to get out of the marriage. When he helped Darcy escape from, when Darcy helped Bingley escape from Jane. I think that's what you mean. And that's an interesting one. So use my points. Does that align with what you see as the conflict? If it all lines up, you can support that in an essay. And again, I'm going to go back and say, I don't say there's a right or wrong to any of those. I say, is it supportable? Is your answer supportable? Can you prove it with specifics in the story? So, okay, that's my introduction to aspects of reading for those of you that are in literature classes for this book. And for those of you who are not, let's read. Let's get on with it. So I'm on page 331 for those of you in the same Barnes & Noble book with me. One morning, about a week after Bingley's engagement with Jane had been formed, as he and the females of the family were sitting together in the dining room, their attention was suddenly drawn to the window by the sound of a carriage, and they perceived a chaise and four driving up the lawn. It was too early in the morning for the visitors, and besides, the equipage did not answer to that of any of their neighbors. The horses were post, and neither the carriage nor the livery of the servant who preceded it were familiar to them. It's like you're looking out at a car and you're saying, oh, I know whose car that is. And they're looking and saying, I don't know whose carriage that. I don't recognize those horses. I don't recognize that carriage. I don't recognize the drivers. So they don't know who's coming up to their house. Who do you think it's going to be? As it was certain, however, that somebody was coming, Bingley instantly prevailed on Miss Bennet to avoid the confinement of such an intrusion and walk away with him into the shrubbery. They're young and in love, and whoever's coming, he doesn't want to be bothered with. He wants to be with her. They both set off, and the conjectures of the remaining three continued, though with little satisfaction, till the door was thrown open and their visitor entered. It was Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Oh, she's the snooty aunt of Darcy that Elizabeth met when she was visiting the Collinses. They were, of course, all intending to be surprised, but their astonishment was beyond their expectation. And on the part of Mrs. Bennet and Kitty, though she was perfectly unknown to them, even inferior to what Elizabeth felt, she entered the room with an air of more than usual ungraciousness. I just changed that sentence all the way in its, let me read it the way it was written. She entered the room with an air more than usually ungracious, made no other reply to Elizabeth's salutation than a slight inclination of the head, and sat down without saying a word. Elizabeth had mentioned her name to her mother on the ladyship's entrance, though no request of introduction had been made. Mrs. Bennet, all amazement, though flattered by having a guest of such high importance, received her with the utmost politeness. After sitting for a moment in silence, she said very stiffly to Elizabeth, I hope you are well, Miss Bennet. That lady, I suppose, is your mother? Elizabeth replied very concisely that she was. And that, I suppose, is one of your sisters? Yes, madam, said Mrs. Bennet, delighted to speak to a Lady Catherine. She is my youngest girl but one. My youngest of all is lately married, and my eldest is somewhere about the grounds, walking with a young man who I believe will soon become a part of the family. You have a very small park here, returned Lady Catherine. Your house isn't that great. Lady Catherine's really bringing on the patronage, isn't she? Return after a short silence. It is nothing in comparison of Rosings, my lady, I dare say, but I assure you it is much larger than Sir William Lucas's. There's that pride again, if you're looking for examples of pride. This must be a most inconvenient sitting room for the evening. In summer, the windows are full west. In other words, the sun's going to make it hot. She's just being critical, saying you're not good enough for us. Mrs. Bennet assured her that they never sat there after dinner, and then added, May I take the liberty of asking your ladyship whether you left Mr. and Mrs. Collins well? So she's reminding her that she knows that family. Yes, very well. I saw them the night before last. Elizabeth now expected that she would produce a letter for her from Charlotte, as it seemed the only probable motive for her calling. But no letter appeared, and she was completely puzzled. Like, Elizabeth is trying to figure out, why the heck are you here? We don't have any, we're not the same social status, as you've made it obvious. We don't have anything in common. So maybe you were passing by the area and you agreed to drop a letter off. So she's waiting for the letter to be given, but it's not being given. And so once again, Elizabeth is sitting there going, what the heck is going on? I don't understand it. Fareed, I think it's better probably when Bingley's back. That's a good one. Because everything begins to change. He left, and we think that like, so if the conflict is who are they going to marry, and we originally thought in the Rising Action Jane was going to marry Bingley, and then everything falls apart when Bingley leaves, and then his coming back, I can buy into that it would be a good turning point. Good. I like how you kept trying at it. Good job. So what is Lady Catherine de Bourgh going to do offensively? I mean, she's just an offensive character, so I assume it's going to be offensive. Mrs. Bennet, with great civility, begged her ladyship to take some refreshment, but Lady Catherine very resolutely and not very politely declined eating anything, and then rising up said to Elizabeth, Miss Bennet, there seems to be a pettyish kind of a little wilderness on one side of your lawn. I should be glad to take a turn at it, if you will favor me with your company. She wants to get Elizabeth alone. So she said, there's a little bad garden over there. I'm not going to compliment your garden, but it looks like a garden. Can we take a walk in it? Just you and I. Go, my dear, cried her mother, and show her ladyship around the different walks. I think she will be pleased with the hermitage. Elizabeth obeyed, and running into her own room for her parasol, attended on her noble guest downstairs. As they passed through the hall, Lady Catherine opened the doors into the dining parlor and drawing room, and pronouncing them, after a short survey, to be decent-looking rooms, walked on. Her carriage remained at the door, and Elizabeth saw that her waiting woman was in it. They proceeded in silence along the gravel walk that led to the copse. Elizabeth was determined to make no effort for conversation with a woman who was now more than usually insolent and disagreeable. How could I ever think her like her nephew? Said she, as she looked in her face. I had to reread that for my own comprehension. Elizabeth was determined not to make effort for conversation with a woman who was now more than usually insolent. She, at one point, apparently, Elizabeth thought that she and Darcy were similar in their rudeness. And now she feels regret for that because she knows Darcy's not as bad as she thought he was. Sid, hey, I'm glad you could join us. I forgot to go on Discord and say I was coming to read. Sorry about that, y'all. It was an impulse. And I think you guys know me by now. I'm very impulsive. Miss Bennet, replied her ladyship in an angry tone, you ought to know that I am not to be trifled with. But however insincere you may choose to be, you shall not find me so. My character has ever been celebrated for its sincerity and frankness, and in a cause of such moment as this, I shall certainly not depart from it. A report of a most alarming nature reached me 2 days ago. I was told that not only your sister was on the point of being most advantageously married, but that Miss Elizabeth Bennet, would in all likelihood be soon afterwards united to my nephew, my own nephew, Mr. Darcy. Ooh, everybody gasps. Though I know it must be a scandalous falsehood, though I would not injure him so much as to suppose the truth of it possible, I instantly resolved on setting off for this place that I may make my sentiments known to you. So she's coming to reprimand Elizabeth for being engaged to Darcy. And we've been reading, is Elizabeth engaged to Darcy? Not that we know of. Did Darcy ask for marriage a long time ago? Yes, he did. Did Elizabeth accept it? No, she didn't. So Elizabeth, is standing there with her mouth just hanging open. Sabine Glass, just want to pop in and say, thank you, Sabine. One of my dear friends from Louisiana had that maiden name, Glass. So I just think of her when I see that name come up. For your information, 46 instead of 56 for the video. Oh, is it? LVI. Isn't that 50? Oh, L is 50. Help me with that, Siddharth. LVI. So that VI is 6. Oh, and you're, instead of 56. No, I think it's 56. No. So what is L for the video name? I put 46. Oh, I read it again. Thank you. I can correct that when I do the details at the end. Thank you. I really appreciate that, because I tell you, this detail stuff is never what I'm good at in work, in life, in anything. I'm just not good at detail. So I appreciate you pointing that out to me. All right, back to it. So she has just slapped her in the face, basically, not physically, but just with this information. If you believed it impossible to be true, said, I love Elizabeth's character. If you believe it impossible to be true, said Elizabeth, coloring with astonishment and disdain, like flushed with anger, I wonder you took the trouble of coming so far. What could your ladyship propose by it? Well, then why are you here? If you know that it's impossible, what are you worried about? At once to insist upon having such a report universally contradicted. Your coming to Longbourn to see me and my family, said Elizabeth coolly, will be rather a confirmation of it, if indeed such a report is in existence. If, do you then pretend to be ignorant of it? Has it not been industriously circulated by yourselves? Do you not know that such a report is spread abroad? Oh, this lady. I never heard that it was. And she's telling the truth, right? And can you likewise declare that there is no foundation for it? I do not pretend to possess equal frankness with your ladyship. You may ask questions which I shall not choose to answer. I don't have to answer your questions. I don't have to answer to you at all. You're nothing to me. You're not my patron. You're not my relative, so and so and forth. Elizabeth, like, I hate confrontation. I would not be able to stand my ground like that, but she just digs in and, pushes back. And that's a positive pride, that if we're tracking the incidents of pride and prejudice. So Lady Catherine de Bourgh has brought her prejudice to Elizabeth, and that's been fought by Elizabeth with her stubborn pride to say, you're not going to bully me, lady. Step on back. I wish I would have more of that character, because when people come at me aggressively, I tend to shrink away. I might be passive aggressive, but I'm not aggressive. And I don't like passive aggressive. So there you go. This is not to be borne, Miss Bennet. I insist on being satisfied. Has my nephew made you an offer of marriage? Your ladyship has declared that impossible. It ought to be so. It must be so. While he retains the use of his reason, but your arts and allurements in a moment of infatuation may have made him forget what he owes to himself and to all his family. You may have drawn him in. You floozy woman, you thought, what's your generation call him, you wooed him over and seduced him into this, and he has forgotten his familial obligations and duty. What do you think Elizabeth is going to say? If I have, I shall be the last person to confess it. If indeed I did that, I'm not telling you. Miss Bennet, do you know who I am? I have not been accustomed to such language as this. I am almost the nearest relation he has in the world, and am entitled to know all his dearest concerns. But you are not entitled to know mine, nor will such behavior as this ever induce me to be explicit. Let me be rightly understood. This match, to which you have the presumption to aspire, can never take place. No, never. Mr. Darcy is engaged to my daughter. Now, what have you to say? Only this, that if he is so, you can have no reason to suppose he will make an offer to me. Well, if that's the case, and he's an honorable man, he would never ask me to marry him. So why are you here? It's not founded. So she's not telling the truth, is she, Lady Catherine de Bourgh? He hasn't he's not engaged to the daughter because we know him to be an honorable man. That's why character is so important in establishing in the early days of the book. That's why authors spend time laying that foundation of character. We know that's incongruous with the character of the Mr. Darcy we've come to understand, that if he had made a promise and an obligation to be engaged to this other girl, he would never be asking someone else. Priyanshu Kumari, I didn't know you were here, so good night to you. Oh, it is so late in India. We just get more and more followers for India, and I'm appreciative of that. Chris, hi, I see you. And Fareed and Siddharth, it's just a conversation between y'all. Thanks. So do you understand why it's so important at the beginning that I kept talking about character, character, character? When you're reading a book for school, it's really important, if you don't understand your characters, that you take time to learn them. And if you read In the Time of the Butterflies with me, that was one of my big complaints. I never could get the characters fixed in my mind. And I think that was intentional because the sisters were all ultimately treated as one hero, that what their action did was united as one action. And that might have been why the author never did really delineate between the sisters. I mean, there were some differences, but I just couldn't keep up with them. Where here, I clearly know who Mr. Darcy is, and I can clearly see that Lady Catherine de Bourgh is the one not to trust. I hope that makes sense to y'all. Lady Catherine hesitated. Remember, Elizabeth just said, well, then he couldn't be engaged with anybody else if that indeed is the case. Lady Catherine hesitated for a moment and then replied, the engagement between them is of a peculiar kind. So now she's got to, backtrack on her announcement that they're engaged. From their infancy, they have been intended for each other. The families want it. It was the favorite wish of his mother as well of hers. While in their cradles, we planned the union, and now, at the moment when the wishes of both sisters would be accomplished in their marriage, to be prevented by a young woman of inferior birth, of no importance in the world, and wholly unallied to the family, do you pay no regard to the wishes of his friends, to his tacit engagement with Miss de Bourgh? Are you lost to every feeling of propriety and delicacy? Have you not heard me say that from his earliest hours he was destined for his cousins? Yes, and I had heard it before. But what is that to me? If there's no other objection to my marrying your nephew, I shall certainly not be kept from it by knowing that his mother and aunt wished him to marry Miss de Bourgh. You both did as much as you could in planning the marriage. Its completion depended on others. If Mr. Darcy is neither by honor nor inclination confined to his cousin, why is not he to make another choice? And if I am that choice, why may not I accept him? So she's told him. Farida does. It's all coming together now. So what has she just said? She's just said, okay, you guys wanted this. And I get that you did everything. And I knew it. You're right. I knew that. You did everything to make them come together, but they're young adults. And if he didn't choose her, and if he indeed has asked me to marry him, he has no obligation to a wish of a mother or an aunt. And he can ask me, and I am also, as an adult, free to accept him if I. She's not saying it did happen. She's just saying if that's what he wants, he has the freedom to do it. Let's see what Lady Catherine de Bourgh is going to say about that. Because honor, decorum, prudence, nay, interest forbid it. Yes, Miss Bennet, interest. For do not expect to be noticed by his family or friends. If you willfully act against the inclinations of all, like you won't be accepted into the family. You will be censured, slighted and despised by everyone connected with him. Your alliance will be disgraced. Your name will never even be mentioned by any of us. These are heavy misfortunes, replied Elizabeth. But the wife of Mr. Darcy must have extraordinary sources of happiness necessarily attached to a situation that she could, upon the whole, have no cause to repine. Oh, that would be unfortunate, but there are a lot of benefits to being with him. So you're not bullying me, lady. I'm not backing down. Obstinate, headstrong girl. I'm ashamed of you. Is this your gratitude for my attentions to you last spring? Is nothing due to me on that score? Let us sit down. You are to understand, Miss Bennet, that I came here with that's still her talking, that I came here with the determined resolution of carrying my purpose, nor will I be dissuaded from it. I have not been used to submit to any person's whims. I have not been in the habit of brooking disappointment. I always get my way, she's saying. That will make your ladyship's situation at present more pitiable, but it will have no effect on me. That's your problem, not mine. I will not be interrupted. Hear me in silence. She wants to berate her and lecture her like she does everybody. Elizabeth's not having it. My daughter and my nephew are formed for each other. They are descended on the maternal line from the same noble line, and on the father's from respectable, honorable, and ancient, though untitled families. Their fortune on both sides is splendid. They are destined for each other by the voice of every member of their respective houses. And what is to divide them? The upstart pretensions of a young woman without family, connections, or fortune? Is this to be endured? But it must not, shall not be. If you were sensible of your own good, you would not wish to quit the sphere in which you have been brought up. She's threatening to get her in trouble with all the community. In marrying your nephew, I should not consider myself as quitting that sphere. He is a gentleman. I am a gentleman's daughter. So far, we are equal. True, you are a gentleman's daughter. But who was your mother? Who are your uncles and aunts? Do not imagine me ignorant of their condition. Whatever my connections may be, said Elizabeth, if your nephew does not object to them, they cannot be nothing to you. Tell me once for all, are you engaged to him? Though Elizabeth would not, for the mere purpose of obliging Lady Catherine, have answered this question, she could not but say, after a moment's deliberation, I am not. Lady Catherine seemed pleased. And will you promise me never to enter into such an engagement? I will make no promise of the kind. Miss Bennet, I am shocked and astonished. I expected to find a more reasonable young woman, but do not deceive yourself into a belief that I will ever recede. I won't stop. I shall not go away till you have given me the assurance I require. And I certainly never shall give it. I am not to be intimidated into anything so wholly unreasonable. Your ladyship wants Mr. Darcy to marry your daughter, but would my giving you the wished-for promise make their marriage at all more probable? Supposing him to be attached to me, would my refusing to accept his hand make him wish to bestow it on his cousin? Allow me to say, Lady Catherine, that the arguments with which you have supported this extraordinary application have been as frivolous as the application was ill-judged. You have widely mistaken my character if you think I can be worked on by such persuasions as these. How far your nephew might approve of your interference in his affairs, I cannot tell, but you have certainly no right to concern yourself in mine. Maybe Mr. Darcy would accept you coming and making these demands to him. I don't. I must beg, therefore, to be importuned no further on this subject. Not so hasty, if you please. I have by no means done. To all the objections I have already urged, I have still another to add. I am no stranger to the particulars of your youngest sister's infamous elopement. I know it all, that the young man's marrying her was a patched-up business at the expense of your father and uncle. And is such a girl to be my nephew's sister? Is her husband? Is the son of his late father's steward to be his brother? Heaven on earth, of what are you thinking? Are the shades of Pemberley to be thus polluted? You can now have nothing farther to say, she resentfully answered. You have insulted me in every possible method. I must beg to return to the house. I'm done with this conversation. And she rose as she spoke. Lady Catherine rose also, and they turned back. Her ladyship was highly incensed. You have no regard, then, for the honor and credit of my nephew. Unfeeling, selfish girl. Do you not consider that a connection with you must disgrace him in the eyes of everybody? Lady Catherine, I have nothing further to say to you. You know my sentiments. You know my feelings. You are then resolved to have him. I have said no such thing. I am only resolved to act in that manner which will, in my own opinion, constitute my happiness, without reference to you or to any person so wholly unconnected with me. You have nothing to do with me, and I've got to think about what my own personal happiness is about. It is well. Now, what we have to understand is, even in this day, as I've said, I'm uncomfortable, standing against an authority figure and pushing back with confrontation. But you've got to understand, we're talking about a major class difference, a major age difference, a major cultural difference. And for Elizabeth to be standing so firmly in her pride is amazing in this culture. And it's really important that we understand what a big step she's taking. And it could cost her everything. It's not like today, oh, she's a hero. Yay, we're proud of her. It really could cost. This lady has the power to destroy her family. So we've got to think in terms of, is it wise? And that's what Austen is presenting to the audience of the day. The audience of the day would be outraged that Elizabeth is doing this because it's against all their cultural norms. And those are the things I think sometimes knowing the difference in cultures and in times matter. And like a younger generation might not understand the depth of significance of some of these acts. It's not unheard of for a teenager to yell back at a teacher or at a parent in our culture. That's kind of a norm. And we look, yeah, tell them. But that's not how the audience would have been receiving this back then. I don't think. I'm certainly not a PhD in British society of this time. It is well. You refuse then to oblige me. You refuse to obey the claims of duty, honor, and gratitude. You are determined to ruin him in the opinion of all his friends and make him the contempt of the world. Neither duty, nor honor, nor gratitude, replied Elizabeth, have any possible claim on me in the present instance. No principle of either would be violated by my marriage with Mr. Darcy. And with regard to the resentment of his family or the indignation of the world, if the former were excited by his marrying me, it would not give me one moment's concern. And the world in general would have too much sense to join in the scorn. And this is your real opinion. This is your final resolve. Very well. I shall know how to act. There's the threat. Do not imagine, Miss Bennet, that your ambition will ever be gratified. You'll never get what you want. I came to try you. I came to test you. I hope to find you reasonable, but depend upon it, I will carry my point, and the threat is made. I will destroy you. In this manner, Lady Catherine talked on till they were at the door of the carriage, when turning hastily around, she added, I take no leave of you, Miss Bennet. I send no compliments to your mother. You deserve no such, like she's breaking the conventions of society. I send no compliments to your mother. You deserve no such attention. I am most seriously displeased. Elizabeth made no answer, and without attempting to persuade her ladyship to return into the house, walked quietly into it herself. She heard the carriage drive away as she proceeded up the stairs. Her mother impatiently met her at the door of the dressing room to ask why Lady Catherine would not come in again and rest herself. She did not choose it, said her daughter. She would go. She's a very fine-looking woman, and her calling here was prodigiously civil, for she only came, I suppose, to tell us the Collinses were well. She's on a road somewhere, I dare say, and so, passing through Meryton, thought she might as well call on you. I suppose she had nothing particular to say to you, Lizzie? Elizabeth was forced to give in to a little falsehood here, for to acknowledge the substance of their conversation was impossible. She wasn't going to tell her mom what was going on. Fareed, especially in a time where I think women are not as strong in it. You're exactly right. Foos, mashallah. Assalamu alaikum. I don't know what to say back to you. So I will correct that this is indeed 56 chapter, and that only leaves us a few more pages. I really only get through a chapter, a reading, sometimes two. So I think I'll probably, this being Sunday and then I go back to work tomorrow, I probably won't get it done until this coming week. And then on to Animal Farm. Yay. All right. Join us on Discord if you haven't already, and we will have conversations there. Keep reading anything that you enjoy reading. Share it in Discord or share it here in the comments below. If you haven't already subscribed, we're just subscriptions away from being at 11,000 subscribers. Why do I care? I don't monetize. I say that often. I care because then I know what I'm doing still has relevancy and I will keep doing it. There's no point in me reading if it's not benefiting anybody. And it makes me feel hopeful that there are budding readers and thinkers out there I think it just shows the world that a channel like this matters. It's not just superficial, and nothing against gamers. I just don't get gaming, just like they probably don't get why would I be reading. Or just other YouTube channels that don't seem to have any real cultural significance. And here, this has something that can make you a stronger person. So like when your parents, oh, you're on that YouTube all the time, you're down some rabbit hole. You can say, no, I'm reading literature and I'm increasing my mind. I think it is 4-2, Fareed. So if you haven't already subscribed, do that. If you've subscribed and you haven't rung the bell, so you know when I come on to read live, you'll know, because I don't ever know. And it's just an impulse. And I hop on when I have the time and when I have makeup on. And so I encourage you to keep reading and keep subscribing and tell your friends about it, grandparents about it, people that have trouble reading, tell them about it. Although it's not really an audiobook. So I don't know that I would want to listen to this if I was reading it as an audiobook. It's more if you're in a classroom situation. Have a great Sunday. Enjoy, or whatever day it is in the future for you. It's cold in Louisiana. That's why I've been inside for the last couple reads, not on my beautiful porch, but the sun is out. And so I can still see the sun come in through the windows. And so you know, Christmas decorations have started coming down today. So hopefully they'll be done by the end of this day. Sad that the Christmas season is over. I love to have Christmas decorations up. You guys, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, keep your health safe and strong, and I will read to you next time. See ya.